Hey everyone, in today's video, I'm going to be talking about math anxiety. Yes, it is a real thing. Students come into the classroom and they already have this feeling about doing math. So if you're an elementary, middle, or high school teacher, how are you going to support your students so that they can feel positive about doing math? Because let's just face it, if students are already coming in and they're feeling like they can't do math, then learning is not going to happen. So I'm going to share with you my 5 strategies that I use in the classroom, working with not just K-12 students, but also adults to help them overcome their math anxiety. If you haven't already, hit that like and subscribe button and get ready. We're talking all about math anxiety. Now, as a teacher educator and is working with K-12 students, that math anxiety is not just something that our K-12 learners face. Adults also have math anxiety. And so if you're an elementary teacher, you might not want to be teaching math, but you have to teach it. So just remember that your own mindset about doing math is going to impact your students. So I always want to address that we have to be aware and self-aware about how we feel about teaching math and make sure that we're setting ourselves up for success. And what does that look like? So as a math teacher, one thing that I do is I always work through my math problems. I always try to solve the problems in different ways, and that way I can support my students when they're getting stuck on math. Because math anxiety is real, and it's actually been studied for quite some time. It is a form of performance anxiety where students have feelings of tension, apprehension, and fear that can interfere with their ability to learn. So we want to make sure that we're examining our students' own beliefs about themselves as a math student, and then help them find ways that they can overcome their math anxiety. And their math anxiety can be attributed to many different things, from negative experiences they've had, stereotypes, cultural stereotypes. A lot of times when I'm at parent conferences, I always hear from the parents saying, well, I'm not a math person, so of course my child isn't either, right? And that's just not true. We all have the ability to do math and be good at math. We just need to put the time, effort, and practice, and actually enjoy doing math and not have fear around it, because our fear associated with math is going to prevent us from actually learning and doing math and continuing to persevere when we are faced with a challenge. And so students' pressure is also a big piece of that. If students are in an environment where it's high stakes and they're feeling a lot of pressure, it can just cause them to shut down and not do math. And so what do? Here are my 5 strategies that I use in my classroom to help my students with math anxiety. And I do this with everyone because these are just good teaching habits that my students can have. First is I want to normalize mistakes. I want to let my students know that mistakes are thinking happening, MATH, right? And that, so when we make mistakes, it's helping us learn, right? It helps us experience that disequilibrium. And so we want our students to know that when you are making mistakes, it's an opportunity for us to think. It's an opportunity for me to think about how I can support you. It's how we learn and grow. And so, every math problem is just a puzzle for us to solve. And so it can take us multiple times. And I always kind of bring my students back to some of their experiences, like the first time they rode a bike, and I live in a surfing community, so the first time they ever tried to surf or do something really hard, snowboarding, okay? It takes at least 20 instances. And so we talk about that. And we also talk about the brain research so that they're aware that, you're not just gonna get it right away. You need to practice. You need to persevere. You need to analyze the problem. You need to think about some of the mistakes that you made. And so just getting your students to really kind of just think about that positive mindset. Another piece, is that a positive mindset can really turn negative if students are feeling a lot of pressure. So anything that will exacerbate math anxiety, like a time test, can really be anxious and can be really anxiety driven for our students. So we want to make sure that, we're creating that safe and positive environment for our students so that they like math, right? And how do we create that environment? Making math fun, doing Kahoots and quizzes and games, allowing our students to collaborate. That is so key. I've been using a lot of building thinking classroom strategies in my class, and students are up at the whiteboard. And oftentimes I have to ditch the math textbook because it's outside of my students' zone of proximate development, or I might have students that are also struggling readers, and so they can't access the math. And so one quick hack that I use is ChatGPT. Love it. And I'll just put in a prompt like, hey, give me 10 math problems that increase in difficulty on the concept of adding and subtracting fractions with unlike denominators. In fact, I even put in there ChatGPT, give me 3 problems on Fortnite with adding and subtracting fractions, and my students just ate it up. And I do these all the time for, themed things too, like Christmas or, the holidays and stuff like that. So we theme-based math problems. So making learning fun is so important. And again, the technology is such a huge piece of that, gamifying instruction, having math games, doing different kinds of problems. I got some problems last week on edX that were like zombie apocalypse problems for math, and the kids were really into it. So don't always have that same structure. In grad school, we learned about what's called the novelty effect. And basically, if it's like something new or something different, can really make math fun too. Another piece of ways that I reduce my students' math anxiety, again, normalizing their mistakes, creating a safe environment, making math fun, is using hands-on tools and visual representations. This is so important. And even if you're teaching middle school and high school, digital tools, right? You don't have to actually get those hands-on manipulatives. Now, if you're teaching elementary, I would strongly encourage you to follow something like the concrete representational abstract model, where kids are working with concrete manipulatives and using a tool like, or a strategy like counting collections, where they actually get a collection of manipulatives and they're constructing their knowledge base and building number sense in very concrete ways. And then moving to drawings, which is representational, and then abstract, which is the symbolic. But middle school and high school, you can still use digital manipulatives. I love Desmos, GeoGebra. Math Learning Center has a ton of digital manipulatives that your students can use, like algebra tiles, base 10 blocks, things like that. So incorporating manipulatives, it also reinforces conceptual understanding, right? And so the more students can understand concepts, the more then when they get to that procedural knowledge that they need, it makes sense. And they're able to analyze their own mistakes because they have that conceptual understanding. Another piece, with the math anxiety or kids are just stuck with problems, is just encouraging them to draw pictures, using visual models. I love having my students draw a bar model, which comes from Singapore math, and having my students start there. If they're having a problem about, percentage, draw that bar model, put in the information that and then again, encouraging them to problem solve and show different representations. And then in my class, I use more of like a CGI model where the students can see different ways of solving the problem and the progression of understanding. And that also builds that buy-in, right? Because if I'm just sharing the answer, students aren't kind of bought into the whole, the mystery of what the answer is, right? So you want to make math like a math mystery. And so that students are more like, connected to like wanting to understand and connected to like wanting to know what the answer is and really trying to develop their own understanding of math. So that's really important too, is how you approach, the process of solving problems in math and the progression of understanding with your kiddos. The other piece is, building on that math anxiety is just practicing relaxation techniques. Believe it or not, we do deep breathing exercise in my classroom. I'm a yoga person, so I know a lot of different breathing exercises and just getting them to, just to tap into like how they're feeling is so important, especially before a test, right? And so we talk about like test anxiety and like what are some strategies so that you can feel relaxed. And again, showing them some strategies of like counting in and breathing and just being more self-aware of, how they're feeling when they are taking a test. And so that they can persevere and they can, be confident. So I always use positive affirmations in my class, like I'm a math person, I like doing math, I can do hard things. And having my students say these mantras, which I call them mantras, so that they are aware that, there's that whole psychological piece as well for being successful in math. So using positive self-talk, encouraging your students, using that I can statements or the power of yet. And there's a ton of research and resources available on YouCubed, if you haven't heard of that, by Joe Bowler out of Stanford. Definitely encourage you to check those resources out. Another piece that's really important for overcoming math anxiety is making sure that you're working in your students' zone of proximal development, right? So let's just face it, if you have students that are 3+ years below grade level and they're working from a textbook that is, way above where they need to be, or even having gifted and talented students that are above that grade level span, you want to make sure that you're working in your students' ZPD. And so one thing that I've been using is ChatGPT, and I'll ask ChatGPT, I'll say, give me 10 problems on this concept that increase in difficulty, and including a few challenge problems. Because I have students that are working at all different levels. And then the fun thing is, after I've done that with ChatGPT, I'll say, now give me 3 problems on this concept around something that my students are interested in, like Fortnite or basketball or sports or something like that. And I put my student's name in it. Because again, they're more likely to engage with the math if they see it's relatable, if they're excited, maybe their name's in it. So of course they want to solve the problem. And just doing these quick little hacks, even though you might be like, well, I didn't really think that was going to be something that they were interested in. It worked. Trust me. And ChatGPT, super easy. And then what I do is I just put these up on the board, and the students work in their small group of 3, which is a BTC strategy, 1 marker, and they're working together. Whoever's holding the marker is recording other people's thinking, and so it encourages collaboration. So collaboration is another key way that you can help reduce your students' math anxiety. And finally, the last step is just providing consistent, supportive feedback. So I have my stamps, I have my stickers, I have the power of my positivity that I'm bringing to my students. I'm always trying to focus on their effort, their progress, giving them feedback like, hey, you're doing a great job, you're on the right track, I can see that you're thinking, clearly about what the steps are. And then celebrating those small wins, acknowledging the students' hard work and their ability to persevere. So hopefully you found my video helpful. Don't forget to leave a comment. Let me know what you liked. Let me know what you're doing in the classroom, and I'll see you next time.